Hello there. Let's have a little chat about the Mandela Effect. It's a technical term for psychologists when there's a mass misremembering of something that happened. And it's named after this weird phenomenon where a lot of people felt that Nelson Mandela had died in the mid 80s that came to light when he passed away in 2013. Which is really strange because clearly he didn't die in the mid 80s. He went on to become the first president of the Republic of South Africa, after all. It was very strange. What we saw last week was a really interesting example of that happening here in a local political context, and that was David Seymour claiming that if Mandela was still alive, he would obviously be out campaigning for ACT, even though he'd be well over 100. Like, that's just a hard slog for anyone that age. That doesn't seem very fair at all. Now, of course, Mandela's grandson turned around and said, yeah, no, that would never happen. And here's the really fascinating thing about Mandela. He is a complicated individual in terms of his beliefs and what he actually stood for. A lot of people don't necessarily realize just how large a spectrum that was. He was for a long time there a member of the SACP, the South African Communist Party. He was very much a socialist in the way he tried to work things, and he was very much into social justice, trying to get equitable outcomes for everybody. But he was also diplomatic and really good at compromise, which means that from the outside, he became a really easy template for people to put their beliefs on. It's why in 2020, for example, Murray Chong, who ran for New Conservatives in New Plymouth, decided to compare himself to Nelson Mandela in the way that he was persecuted as a middle-aged straight white guy. I guess. Yeah, why not? Nelson Mandela's legacy is huge, and everybody kind of wants a part of it. When he died in 2013, we saw a whole bunch of politicians come out with reverence for what he'd achieved, and that's completely understandable. But some of those politicians included people like Dick Cheney, who had voted against sanctions against South Africa during the apartheid era, or David Cameron, who actually went to South Africa as part of a group of people trying to stop sanctions against the apartheid era country. And then they turn around and go, look what he achieved. It was amazing. It's really quite a weird thing to look at. The big risk that we've got here, though, is that this is fluff. We're not looking at the policies ACT is putting forward. We're not looking at the outcomes that would cause, and we're weeks away from the election. But it's this kind of fluff that ends up making news headlines and getting people talking, and it doesn't add to the conversation around what the policies are, but it does give much needed headlines and airtime to a political party who's doing everything they can to get you to look at them without looking at them. So make sure when you're looking at election coverage this year that you work out what is the wheat and what's the chaff, what's actually there about policies and what's on offer versus what's there to make headlines and create noise.